No, I didn't see them over there.
All right, you are live.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and start the Akron City Council Reimagining Public Safety Special Committee. And today is November 18th and it's 5 p.m. This is our working group for technology and equipment. We do have one council member that will not be present this evening, and that's Ward 10 Councilwoman Sharon Connor, but we do have Councilman Russ Neal with us. And we do need approval of the minutes from our November 4th working group minutes. We got to approve those. So Russ, can I get a motion for that?
So motion to approve.
Thanks. And I'll second that. So obviously all in favor, aye.
Yep.
And we don't have no opposition in regards to that. So today moving forward, we do have our 2 interns with us, and we also have our 2 representatives from the Akron Police Department. And this will be our final meeting in regards to the working groups for equipment and technology. And today we're going to dive into some video from our BWC cameras. Lieutenant Farrar is going to present that and share that with us. So I'll turn it over to the lieutenant and we'll move forward.
All right. Well, hopefully this time we'll have a little bit better luck with the video and the audio. Let me see if I can share this PowerPoint with you. Feel free to comment. Kind of flying blindly here. Once I make this screen bigger, I don't think I can see you guys that are participants. So let me know. So today we're going to talk about video analysis. I know Mr. Kamer mentioned body-worn cameras. Of course, we're going to talk about that. But in the greater scheme, we're going to talk about just how videos play an important role in police investigations. So videos are a great piece of evidence in today's, rapidly spreading day and age of technology. Many, in fact, most of our major police investigations now have some piece of video evidence, whether it's CCTV or whether it's even the body-worn camera footage from the officers that are on scene of a major or even minor police investigation. The city of Akron, we have talked about in recent meetings how they have an expanding network of cameras and are more frequently being relied on to assist us with these police investigations. We also talked about Milestone, which is a software for video management and brief cam, and that is used for video analytics. We talked about these in the other Reimagining Policing meetings. We touched on the benefits of license plate reader technology and how license plate reader cameras can be used to send live alerts to police working in the field. We talked about facial recognition software and how that may, in the years to come, be improved upon and be made more widely available to law enforcement in years to come. But can anyone think of any drawbacks to all of this video? Do you recognize that videos may not reflect a complete and accurate picture of an event or incident? Have you ever watched a video and saw it differently than someone else? And do you ever watch a football game or a basketball game or a baseball game and wonder why they have so many different angles that cameras cover to capture every play and every pass? And then more importantly, how do you think you would perform in a high stress situation, and how much would you actually be able to recognize in a rapidly evolving situation if you were put in one? So let's talk briefly about cameras and field of views, or FOV. So the area of human vision from which useful information can be extracted at a brief glance is around 55 to 60 degrees. So if I had a cursor, which you can't see my cursor, if your eye was in the corner of that V and you were looking straight ahead, you would see around 55 to 60 degrees in front of you. Everything beyond that 55 to 60 degrees would be just kind of peripheral. Your peripheral vision is how we would describe it. You would see it, but you wouldn't see it with a great amount of clarity. So that's what the field of view is. So when we talk about Axon and these body-worn cameras that the Akron Police Department has, I want you to recognize that Axon body-worn cameras actually have a 120-degree field of view. So if the human eye can only see 55 to 60 degrees in front of them, recognize that the Axon Body 3s, we just actually upgraded from the Axon Body 2s to the Axon Body 3s, have a 120-degree field of view and record all the time in a 120-degree field of view, even though the eye, the human eye, cannot possibly capture that field of view. So here's a picture that I took from my drone. I put this drone up in Cuyahoga Falls. It's around 400 feet in the air, give or take, slightly under. And this is the Ernest Angley Cathedral, the cement radio tower or cell phone tower in Cuyahoga Falls. This was actually overlooking Portage Crossings here in this particular photo. And you can see from the horizon that it kind of looks like a round shaped field of view here. So this drone, this DJI Phantom 2, took this photo with 140 degrees. Now keep in mind the body camera is 120 degrees. The human eye can see around 55 to 60. So if you look at that rounded view of the kind of the atmosphere, or looking beyond the tower there, that's actually called a curvature of the lens. So this picture is distorted, and this is what is called a fisheye. So this view from this camera is stretched. It's not representative of what the human eye can see, and that's what's called a fisheye lens. If you look at another drone that I have, the DJI Phantom 3, I put this about 400 feet above downtown Akron over 59. This particular drone has a 94-degree field of view. So you can see the difference between 140 degrees and 94 degrees. You can see the horizon in the back of this 94 degrees is much more flat rather than this curvature on this first picture. So keep in mind that picture is not perfect. It's being stretched and curved, and that's called a fisheye view, all right? So if you look at some, just a kind of a still image on a typical body-worn camera, if you look at the doors and you look at the edges of the houses or the gates or whatever it is that they happen to be open, you can see that those angles are all curved, and that's what that fisheye lens is. Okay, so when you're actually looking at a body-worn camera, the view is distorted quite a bit, which creates a big depth perception issues on what the officer actually sees. So now when we talk about field of view, imagine being in a use of force if you're an Akron police officer, a police officer anywhere, or if you become involved in an officer-involved shooting. These things by definition are chaotic and violent. They cause high levels of stress and triggers to release hormones and neurotransmitters throughout your body. So these stress and these arousal happenings going on in your body causes the individual's field of view to narrow. So if you have ever heard the term tunnel vision, anytime the human is put under a great amount of stress, whether it be with violence or if you ever get in a traffic accident and actually stuff feels like it's slowing down, that's because of the stress and the arousal that's going through your body. So that's what happens under normal stressful conditions of the human body, and it's called tunnel vision. So under extreme stress, a person's field of view can actually narrow to about 1/2 of 1 degree. Okay, keep in mind the body-worn cameras record all the time at 120 degrees, all right, field of view. Our useful vision is only 55 to 60, but yet under an extreme time of stress or violent encounter, the human body actually closes down to 1/2 of 1 degree. So take a look at this next video. This is a video from a SWAT entry. This isn't an Akron police SWAT entry, but somewhere in the US where the SWAT team was making an entry. The suspect inside this home had access to weapons. In fact, when he opened the door for the SWAT team, or the SWAT team actually opened the door, the suspect came to the door with a gun in his hand. These SWAT operators are all highly experienced and well-trained. And of course, they're on target. Now watch what happens when you watch this video. Can you guys hear that? So somebody give me some feedback on that video. Did it play relatively smoothly?
Yeah, I think it played pretty good. There was a couple spots that looked like
Herky-jerky.
buffering problems.
Yeah. So I'm going to describe that call. You got all these SWAT operators huddled up in this door. I mean, there must have been what, 5, 6 of them? You know, maybe Captain Yowie can expand on some of that. It's a typical thing. The guy comes to the door with a gun in his hand. It's all the way down by his waist. I mean, the officers are already up on high ready. They're ready to shoot their weapons if, in fact, this guy brings his gun up and shoots at the officer. And you know what happened? 2 officers were shot in that short period of time because the officers couldn't actually perceive the threat quicker than the suspect can bring the gun and shoot 2 SWAT officers. So it's pretty phenomenal, all right? So when something happens that is fast, it's very quick, complex, and dynamic, how much can you see and remember? Take a look at this 7-second video, and I'm gonna ask you one question, all right? Just watch it real quickly. All right, so 7.43 seconds. All right, I'm going to ask you guys one question. Interns, if you want to chime in, please do. How many cups did she have on that table? The number of cups on that table. Captain Yo, you can't answer because you've seen this video before. Anybody?
I don't know. I'll let the interns weigh in.
Interns, can you help me out, interns? Interns, were you paying attention to the video at all?
I'm gonna guess like 12.
12.
I don't know. I saw 3 structures. And I
3
know 2 of them had at least 3 cups.
Listen, you get an A for today. All right. This young lady had 12 cups. You have good eyes. All right. So you were paying attention. All right. But, you know, we have the luxury when we review body worn camera, when we watch instant replays that the refs have already made calls on, we have the luxury of watching this type of stuff in slow motion, and we can see it with our very own eyes here. And, you know, it's clearly very easy to see that this young lady has 12 cups because we have the benefit of slowing this video down. All right. This is the old Monday morning quarterback into this, right? So it makes it much easier. All right, interns, are you ready for your next test? Interns, let me know you're live.
Yes.
All right. Trayvon, this is for you. Pay attention. Don't fail. All right.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. Did you see the moonwalking bear?
How'd you guys do on that one? Did you count 13?
I did count 13, but I didn't
Yeah.
see the moonwalking bear.
Yeah,
Wait,
me either.
speak up. You guys said what? You did not see the moonwalking bear,
No, I did not.
but you saw it on the instant replay, right?
Hmm.
It was pretty apparent. So these are fun little videos to show, all right? It's called selective attention. You think you know what you saw, but you don't know what you didn't see, okay? You think you know what you saw, but you don't know what you didn't see. So once you intensely focus on anything, it's hard to focus on other things. And this is called unintentional blindness. And this applies to every human all of the time. So when we talk about selective attention and field of view, we're talking about peripheral narrowing, and selective attention causes the individual to not perceive or remember some aspects of an encounter that a camera will absolutely capture. A camera cannot recreate what a human under stress sees, hears, or feels, nor can it incorporate perspective derived from previous training, experience, or provide context to many uses of force or officer-involved shootings. So when we talk about video analysis and force science is basically how quick our human body can react to a threat, all right? Watch this next video and tell me how you think this police shooting looks. How would the general public perceive the same video if they watch this on the news? A little history behind this police shooting is this. There was a male who had stolen some type of car. Okay, so he was driving a stolen auto. All the police knew was that the car was stolen and the man had access to weapons or had a weapon on his person. The chase went through numerous jurisdictions involving many different police agencies. Eventually, they get the suspect in the stolen car stopped, and the man gets out, the suspect gets out of the car, and they have this interaction by the back passenger door with the police, who all have their guns ready and are shouting clear commands to the man who may or may not have a weapon and was involved in a stolen car that were pursued by the police. Take a look at the video. This video was taken from somebody with an iPhone or an Android from a couple 100 yards away. Tell me what you think of this police shooting. So there he is in the white shirt there by that silver car, by that back door, clearly not listening to the officer's commands. So what'd you guys see there? Anybody?
I'll say that I think his one hand was behind his back the whole time.
All right. Mr. Neal, what did you see there?
You know, Lieutenant, it was kind of hard to see. A lot of things were going through my mind. First, was the gentleman coherent? Because any rational person, when you got that many police around you with their guns, you know, they're going to comply. So right away I went, was he coherent? Was he on drugs? Did he have mental issues? That's what was running through my mind, because why would a rational person do what he was doing? That's what I was thinking. So
it looked like to me, okay, that the police didn't shoot the guy until his hands were in the air and his back was towards the officers. That's what it looked like to me. Okay. Again, we're a couple 100 yards away. So let's take a look at this. Now what we have to do with these video analytics that we have with the software that we use, every police agency has something similar to this. You can actually overlay a stopwatch on this video, okay? And it will count in real time. And here we can look at this video. This is about 2.2 some seconds, and maybe it'll give us a little bit better idea of what happened. So the suspect reaches towards his waistband in this still photo. You can see that he's kind of turned. There's officers on the left side facing the suspect from like what would be the hood of this car. So this man appears to, from 100 and some feet distance, appears to be reaching for a weapon towards his waistband at 0.22 seconds. And at point 105, you can see the man has both of his hands extended in what appears to be, he's holding like what would appear to be a weapon and pointing it at the officer at 105. At 129, okay, less than a half of a second later, this man had turned away from the officers and put his hands up in the air. And then at 206, less than what, 3/4 of a second later, the suspect is shot by the officer in the back. All right. So think about this. It takes a suspect 1/2 of a second to raise a gun, shoot, turn away towards the officer, and flee. Less than 1/2 of a second. And here's a demonstration of this. So where do you think, by the time the police officer perceives that this man has a gun and has already shot at the officer, where do you think this man is?
He's running away.
Yeah, he's running away. So at 0.22 seconds, okay, he's reaching for a gun that he never had in his waistband, because maybe he has some mental illness issues. I'm not sure. I don't know all the history behind it. This man never had a gun, but he acted like he pulled a gun from his waistband. He got in a two-handed hold in 1.29 seconds and acted like he was shooting at the officer. Then he turned away from the officers, put his hands up in the air, and by the time the officer perceived the man he thought had a weapon and thought was pointing it at the officers, he was shot in the back. So for science, they've done thousands and thousands and thousands of studies with police officers all over the world. It takes the average trained police officer approximately 1/2 to 1.5 seconds to recognize a threat and move the gun from the low ready position up on target and pull the trigger. That's how long it physically takes the human body to process a threat, make the brain recognize the threat, and make the finger pull the trigger. All right. So if you think about this, a batter in baseball can't wait for a ball to cross home plate before he decides whether it's something to swing at. Makes sense? Officers have to make a prediction based on cues. Of course, it follows that batters will sometimes swing at bad pitches and that officers will sometimes shoot unarmed people. It happens because they have to make split-second decisions based on body cues that may or may not be accurate. All right. So was the shooting objectively reasonable? So it took the suspect 1 second to reach towards his waistband, get in a two-handed shooting stance, point an imaginary gun at an officer, turn away from the officer, and put his hands in the air. It took the officer just over 1.5 seconds to process the suspect's threatening actions and pull the trigger. These times are 100% consistent with any kind of force study research. All right. Graham versus Connor is what the police department uses, and the Supreme Court and any courts use to determine if a shooting that an officer is involved in is objectively reasonable. All right. So, but the problem is the camera encourages second guessing. So we can all sit there and second guess that video when those officers were in that split-second decision on whether or not did he really pull a gun from his waistband, or was it just an imaginary gun and it was just a fake gun, a cell phone, a wallet, you fill in the blank. This happens all throughout the country, all throughout the police, all over the country. And these are split-second decisions. And do you think we make mistakes sometimes? Absolutely. So the bottom line here, folks, is cameras, technology, we love it. It's part of police investigations today. It's going to be part of police investigations in the future. But you have to remember that a piece of video evidence is only one piece of what should be used to help solve an investigation. And that good old-fashioned police work, interviewing, establishing relationships with community members, out there doing neighborhood canvases, talking to business owners, that's, folks, that's what solves crimes. All right. And that's what we have to remember, that this technology is awesome. It makes our job certainly easier, but sometimes the videos do not always show the exact same live event that the officer perceived or the video represented. And we talked about some of those reasons why. Who has any questions?
Very good presentation. And I'll just open it up to questions. I have the hand raised function open, but anyone can chime in anytime.
Mr. Chairman, for me, the obvious question that comes in is, of course, there was a charter change with the body worn camera video being released as soon as possible. I mean, for what I saw, it's difficult. I mean, we want transparency, but there has to be education all the way around. Because, I mean, even looking at that, even when it was broken down second by second, it was still kind of difficult to see. And so, I was actually, I forget who I was talking to. I know our intentions were well, and you showed that how the body camera has like a wider perspective. And you mentioned how we want citizen engagement. I'm just being 100 transparent. Imagine there's people there who see what's going on, and they're standing in the peripheral, and they want to share information. But now we release this camera, and if I'm a part of the crime and I see this camera when it's released as well, I see who was there watching what was going on. And so I'm taking note of who was in the area, where if I'm committing this crime and I'm an accomplice, just as quick as that stuff happens and I'm not catching everything, so is the quote unquote criminal maybe not seeing everything. So somebody who is there observing, taking video, giving us information, it for the most part can be anonymous in some kind of way. But if this video is there where everybody can now see who was there and see what was going on, now everybody has access to study it. I know that's something folks may not want to hear, but that was one of the concerns that was brought up to me when we talked about, releasing everything. So we have to educate ourselves, educate the community, and make sure that in trying to do a good thing, we don't just complicate matters.
Yeah, Mr. Neal, I think you bring up some really good points. I mean, these aren't easy decisions to make. I mean, of course, everyone here on this call, including the police that are involved on these calls, it's all about transparency and accountability. But at what point do you release a video that shows the police shooting an unarmed suspect in the back and they don't burn our city down? Okay.
Right.
There's justifications for that shooting. In fact, that went to court and those officers were all cleared. Why? Because it was objectively reasonable to shoot that man based on the body cues that he exhibited and based on the information that those police officers on scene at the time had in front of them. Now, this video is probably 10 plus years old, but imagine if a shooting like that happened in Akron and people demanded the video and we released the video before the investigation was complete or before the analytics could be done. Okay. Think about some of the challenges that may cause. I mean, I get it. Everybody should at some point see these videos, but is there a right time to release them? And if so, when is that time? And does it depend on the event? These are difficult decisions to make, but you can see clearly from some of the videos that I showed and demonstrated today that these are tricky little landmines to kind of hop around. Right. And I get it. The legislation with transparency and accountability and release the body worn camera videos as quick as we possibly can. I understand it. It's good because at the end of the day, those are going to be released anyway. But we want to make sure that the narrative, an improper narrative, doesn't get out ahead of the video or the investigation before the investigation has a time to be completed.
Right.
And explained. So sometimes what a lot of these places are doing, you know, they may release a body worn camera video and they may not make any comments about it. Okay, some departments I have seen around the country where they release a body worn camera video, but there's absolutely no context to it because they don't want to say anything because the investigation isn't complete. And when they do that very same thing, then they play that video and the videos actually create more questions than answers. And so it's tricky for a police department. It's tricky for, you know, the police chief, the law department, the mayor to determine when these things should be released. Because sometimes, I mean, it might not be beneficial to release them until at least a portion of the investigation is complete.
Yeah. Well, you know, I know you mentioned something, how technology is good, but ultimately everything boils down to human relationships, trust. And I know there's been a lot of conversation over the years. I don't know if you guys remember a gentleman by the name of Mr. Herman Olden. Mr. Olden was over the Coalition for a Safe Community. And they pushed for sort of like a citizens review group. After what I saw, and I was able to take a look and kind of having the counter and having you explain and see how difficult it was to see what happened, I'd almost rather rethink and have the citizens select that citizens review committee that would see the tape first before we would just release it out to the whole public. Because like you said, it can really complicate the matter. In trying to do a good thing, we compromise ourselves. That was educational for me. Yeah, it's making me think more.
Mr. Kamer, if you don't mind, I would like to interject myself here too, if that's okay. You know, I guess what's a nice thing for the summary, the end of our policing, technology group meetings here is to throw this out. There's wonderful things about technology, right? It's been very helpful. The body worn cameras are hugely helpful in showing the community what is actually happening on the streets of Akron and to share with them, if nothing, a snippet. And like Mark said, a limited view, but a snippet of the perceptions of police. But there are, I guess, downsides to this as well. And that is if folks aren't, as you said, Mr. Neal, educated about that, educated about those limitations, educated even in a broader perspective about these use of force issues that, Lieutenant Farrar has already kind of tapped into a little bit tonight. And that is just barely scratching the surface on issues connected to this, as far as doing investigations and explaining to folks how these things work. And of course, people certainly are emotionally driven, and they want to draw conclusions right away. Maybe that's human nature. Maybe that's just the limitations of how our mind and perceptions work. But as this technology unfolds, and we need more of it, we need more in the intelligence gathering. We need more in the tactical arena, whether it's tasers or armored vehicles or surveillance equipment like drones and cameras. At the same time, this education needs to expand. Now, we, the police department, have work to do that, to have citizens academies, to have academies for leadership throughout the city, things that can, just as you said tonight, Mr. Neal, hey, that's an eye opener. And man, that is so wonderful to hear, right? Because everyone can have differing opinions. In fact, at the police department, we're here to have everyone support their views and perspectives. And really the only thing that we can ask, and I think from a police perspective, is that those opinions are supported in fact and are educated opinions about, number one, the challenges that these things can create, understanding that we can't come out and make emotional decisions as a police department. We have to thoroughly investigate those things. There's long-term things like the prosecution of cases. There's long-term things. Even if an officer were to do something wrong, discipline things, contractual things, legal things that we have to work through to do. And we're not afforded the luxury of making a split-second snap decision on those as a leadership of the city of Akron. So it is very nice, and it's a great summary to what we've been working on this whole time to understand the good, the need for these things, how we're open for in all these areas for new technology. We continually test and evaluate and welcome the public's and business ideas that can make our job and do our job better. But each one of those things certainly come with it caveats, considerations, challenges that we need everyone in the community to be educated upon, because if we don't do it, like Mark said pretty bluntly here, it can cause people to go down a path that leads to some bad things happening in our community, really undermining the trust that the community may have with us in the leadership. There was an excellent presentation, I think, by Lieutenant Farrar here, and it just really kind of scratches on the surface of many issues that are really in the background about the technology. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to add that. This group certainly hasn't focused on use of force issues, but just to be direct, some of these things were at the heart of issues that prompted these meetings in the first place, right? So it's an excellent tie-in, and Mr. Neal, your comments were very much appreciated. So I just feel like I had to speak up, and the more we can pass these things on to the community, I think the better this whole process is going to be, right? As we reimagine what needs to happen to improve what we do with the police department in the city. So thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
I think if everybody's honest and sincere, what we want is to be able to be better all the way around. And education, I'd like to see if with some of the stuff that we're talking about, the beautiful thing about COVID is that it's forced us to use technology like this. And now maybe this presentation I know will be there, but if there's other things to educate folks about the pros and the cons of everything that we're looking at, the challenges. And I would like to say, I do think now that this has been passed and we've got this going out, I know there's been groups that have been meeting with the officers, maybe honoring that work by, since everybody's gonna be seeing it anyways, at least educating those folks so that they can be a buffer between, the community and the city as far as helping us educate folks on why things are done the way they are and what they're seeing. Because like I said, that was eye-opening. I mean, I've had my opportunity to go to the police academy and fire weapon, and one of my things was, I said, well, why don't you just shoot them in the hand? And they told me, they said, okay, take your gun and see how many times you can shoot them in the hand. And so I shot, and I did hit him a couple times, but most of my shots missed. I understand. And when you only got a few seconds, you miss, that could be your life. So, I mean, I understand that thing. I think education is what we need from this standpoint, so that we all understand each other better and what we're trying to get. Because I know that our intent is not to do anything that's going to compromise anybody's job. But at the same time, it would be good to see that maybe before we passed it, so we could have said, well, maybe we need to, we always amend our legislation so that it can meet our purest intent without harming anyone. And if I can say this, when we talk about creating equitable policy, that's what it's about. Policy that does harm to no one. Usually what happens is when we have blinders on or we're coming from one direction, in the purest sense, we unintentionally harm a segment of our population. Of course, in the intentional sense, we go out and we harm them we know that the policy is going to harm them. We go ahead with it anyway. So thanks for letting me just share that piece, Mr. Chairman.
No, absolutely. I don't know if the interns have anything to say. If you do, yep, Shelby looks like she does. Go ahead.
I would just like to say that recently, I feel like a lot of the issues come from a very us versus them problem when that is not at all how police officers are supposed to be relating to the community. And so something like this, where piggybacking off of what Russell Neal said, something like this where we are actively educating the public on the difficulties of a situation like this, I feel like is a really good next step. And maybe, really emphasizing the Citizens Academy that you guys talked about. I know that you have done some mediations with people who have had issues with your actions and just kind of like talk to the families afterwards to clear up the situation. I feel like that's a really amazing next step for improving community relations.
Good, good. Anything else? Anyone else? I'll go ahead for a few minutes. I agree with a lot of what Captain Yohe said and my colleague Russ Neal. Obviously, at the beginning of these meetings, when we were discussing reimagining public safety, obviously I didn't know what direction we were going to go, what the outcome was going to be, what it's still supposed to be. But I have learned a lot in regards to these meetings. Obviously, as a legislator, Russ will tell you, we're downtown and a lot of legislation will come in. And those are the days we learn about what's going on and how it can impact the community. So these meetings, and I've watched a lot of the other working groups too. I've learned a lot more about the police department. And I don't know moving forward what President Somerville will do, but I would really like to see if we could try to do this back in next year, 2021, continuing that process. And we could even expand if it's obviously on public safety chairperson on city council. So I'd like to see maybe a working group for the Akron Fire Department. Maybe I'm really speaking too much than what I should be. But Russ and I could probably go on and on and on. We've got so many different departments within the city. If it's budget, parks and rec, and I could just go on and on. But yeah, I've learned a lot, and I'm actually excited that I was able to be a chairperson for these committees and participate. And I learned a lot. Lieutenant, you really educated me. Captain, obviously you're my district captain that oversees all the officers in my ward that patrol and stuff. So we have that working relationship on a daily basis. But I did learn a lot, so I can't thank you guys enough for presenting all these videos and facts and information. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But I have learned a lot, and I think this is good for the public too. So they can tune in and learn about the police department and what we have to offer and how we can be better. So, Councilman, go ahead. You're on mute.
Thank you. This week is the National League of Cities National Conference. Usually I'd be going, but it's online. So, and in the Race, Equity, and Leadership Committee conference, they had 3 mayors from cities who experienced a shooting. They had Mayor Lovely Warren, who was from Rochester, New York, speak. They had, I think he's a councilman or a mayor from a smaller city, Jack Spano, who was George Floyd, he didn't know George Floyd, but George Floyd just lived about a mile down the street from him. Then another was from a city out in Washington. All of them spoke about these incidences. And what Mayor Jack Spano said, and this is what I want us as council to understand. He said, if you think this is just about reimagining public safety, you've got it wrong. It's about reimagining how we govern, period. Because most of these issues, and I think we've learned it from here. When you have unemployment, when you have mental illness, when you have substance abuse, poor housing conditions, poverty, all these different stressors that are on community, even when we just passed, and I know those of our colleagues that wanted to pass the no more than 6 people in a house. Our only line of defense is the police department. We need to look at how our policies impact every area of life. Because if we legislate more holistic policy, engage the citizens, we're talking about engaging the citizens in the police department, engage them in our legislative process. And Ms. Viviano will know this, we talked about having different layers so that citizens can see the legislation as it goes through the process. And then there'll be a layer for legislators where we can make our edits and the citizens can make their comment so that nobody's surprised when it comes to the floor. Transparency all the way. It will help us become better because I think all of us know we're being forewarned of the housing crisis that's getting ready to hit us again and all the stressors that are coming from that. So I'm just saying we're focusing on public safety, but from what I heard from folks who were like in the national presence, they all said it's deeper than just the police. Now, this is not to say we've got real problems with, policing, just like we got real problems with legislating, okay? So we've got to understand all of us have to do better. And it's when that is our intent, then we can take the open, honest, transparent conversations. Well, we may get offended sometimes, but when we know we're just trying to do what's right, I don't think we should. I think we we'll get there. And I want to say this. I want to say this too. As we have these conversations, we have to give each other the freedom to speak their truth. I'm going to say this. When we first started these off, the chief came and he shared that he was angry and frustrated. I did not have a problem with that because I sit on the Ohio Municipal League and there are other law enforcement officers. That is a common theme across. Now, I'll tell you what we say. You can't be defensive. But if you're being honest about how you feel, who am I to judge you? We've got to give people freedom to speak their truth. And because I had other conversations with the chief, I knew where he was coming from. Because we can't always, when we're doing stuff like this, we can't always rush everything through as an emergency when the legislation comes. We need to leave room open for dialogue. Then when we give everybody a chance to speak, if we still pass it, so be it. And be it we in the police department or in council or in administration, if after we've done all the vetting, we're still stuck in our ways. And I'm not talking about the chief. I'm just talking about the process. Then we have to really reflect on, if our time has come. But I didn't get a chance to speak that time. But I want to say this because I'm tired of being in conversations where everybody's saying the politically correct thing. And then you leave out of there and nothing changes. People say, you read in the paper, I'm ready for open and transparent conversations. Well, you know they're not. So when somebody is open and transparent and speaks their truth, I don't want to see us criticize them. And then the bottom line is this. We cannot lose the humanity of every individual. be it somebody that's out on the street that we think is a criminal, or somebody that's in a uniform, or somebody that's a legislator. But we've got to have real conversations. And for a lot of times, I think we've been dancing around it. I appreciate this right here, because I'm hoping this is a start for some real stuff. And I'm going to say this and then I'll stop. Because I had a conversation with the FOP President Clay Kozart. And this is when I brought in the legislation about holding the union accountable. Okay. Our council didn't approve it, but I still think there's room for that to be done. Matter of fact, I don't know if you guys are familiar with House Bill 703 that's coming through the state. But this is the point I want to get to. Give me a second. I gotta let my mind catch up with my mouth, okay? I got excited there for a minute. Give me a second, Mr. Chairman, if you please. Go ahead and get your closing comments, because what I had to say is important, but I can't remember it right now.
No, that's fine. I'll ask if there's anything else. We'll try to close out the meeting. Anybody else have any other comments before I ask Russ what his memory comes back, and we'll move forward with ending the meeting. Captain Yohe?
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say, Mr. Neal, those are many outstanding comments and very supportive of the things you're saying. Mr. Kamer, I would love to continue this. I think we need to continue the educational process for everyone, not just each other, city council, police department, but including the citizens. I know that we embrace that. I know that our current chief and future chiefs will embrace the same thing. The more we can understand one another, the better off we will all be. I know at the heart, I can't speak for all police officers, obviously, but in interacting with many of them, the similarities between the public and the officers might be the same, in that they want that transparency. They want to be understood. They want to understand the human element. As Mr. Neal, as you pointed out, there's lots of complex social issues involved. The police officers many times can't be held accountable for the mental health system, the poverty, for the educational system, the housing, all those things. Many times the officers feel that they're the bottom rung in the ladder. And so that anytime one of those systems fails, or there's a crack in one of those systems, who's the net to catch the failures of those systems? And of course, somehow become the face or the poster child for the failures of the systems above them, which we may collaborate with and want to work with, but certainly maybe are beyond our ability to appropriately fix, right? We can't, as police department, fix poverty. We can't fix the educational system. We can help. We can have officers in the school. We can work collaboratively with mental health and social services. But at the end of the day, the officers sometimes feel two things. Number one, that it's hard for us to fix all these complex social problems that we many times get stuck with dealing with. And number two, that wanting our side to be known and understood, and again, to have people have an educated insight into the role of a police officer in the city, in the challenges that we're facing, that many times feel like in no-win situations, right? We want to enforce the law, but we also have to have the humanity and understanding. And COVID situation has really kind of highlighted these things for us, right? People want to have rights to keep their business open, and people want to have rights to, protect each other. And so there's obviously different perspectives on this. And who's stuck in the middle? The police, right? Who, and then understanding, trying to juggle those things and what's in the best interest of justice and society, and balancing all of those needs. That really, at its heart, we have very limited ability to influence. The police officers don't make the laws. The police officers, can't spread wealth. They can't, and yet they're the ones held responsible sometimes for all these social ills.
Right.
So when we talk about humanity for the public and transparency, I really don't see the difference. Many of the things that the police officers, the heart of the issues or challenges for police officers, really are at the heart of society or the community. The same thing of wanting to be understood, to not be prejudged, to not be labeled, to be treated with the same level of humanity and understanding. And so, Mr. Neal, I just, again, I'm very pleased at your comments. Mr. Kamer, very pleased at your desire to continue these dialogues. And I can't think but nothing but good things for our future should we continue to do those things. So thank you all for being involved.
Thank you, Captain.
I
Are you ready, Russ?
Yeah, before I lose it. I mentioned my conversation with President of the FOP, Clay Cozart. And he asked me about the legislation I brought in. He said, well, why didn't you bring in something about racial equity training? I said, Clay, the reason why I didn't bring it in, because I don't want to ask the police department to do something that the legislative body and the administrative body has not done. So when we talk about structural and institutional things, now, Lovely Warren, I want to create a context. Lovely Warren, the mayor of Rochester, New York, she is the chairman of the Race Equity and Leadership Committee, which gives best practice for elected officials across the country. I believe the police chief there was Black, but yet they had a scenario where a person was killed, the same type of scenario, and the chief was had to step down, and many of the top officers. What am I saying? When we talk about structural and institutional racism, this isn't a color thing. Is there a black and white thing? Oh yeah, sometimes, but we're talking about the institution, not the individuals. Because here you had a Black mayor who chairs the best practice policy for race equity and leadership for the national body that we're part of. But she had the same outcome in her city. We've got to change the institutions, the practices that we have, the policies, and it takes honest and open conversation. So this is what I'd like to see, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to see leadership in council, in the three branches of government, honestly, go through race equity and leadership training. Because we have to, when we use certain terms, we have to normalize that conversation so that we're on the same frequency and we know what we're talking about. And so it'll help us make better policy. It'll help you, we'll have a better communication, a better undergirding. So when he asked me that, I told him that's why I didn't want to bring that in, because I didn't want to heap something on the police that we hadn't even done yet. We're 3.5 years into this thing, and as council, we have not had any formal training. We've got legislation going back between council and administration using the word equity. We have not had any training. Using the word institutional racism, we haven't had any training. We talk about it. So as we educate the public, we need to educate ourselves and understand we're not like this. We're like this. We're one, and we have to work together. And then as we vet our policy, we'll be able to prevent a lot of things from happening. So thank you for allowing me to start back in.
No, thank you. And with that, yeah, I would like to continue these discussions. Russ will tell you real quick, and I'll end this, is Russ has been on council for a while, and we and Sarah, our deputy clerk, will testify to this. We can spend a lot of time in meetings, a lot of hours each week in meetings. Like today, I called actually 3 different departments. I somewhat knew the answer, but I wanted to clarify. It's just something about, like, when I'm downtown and we're in council meetings and we're approving legislation or debating legislation, it's like this dialogue here is just kind of different. I don't know if Russ will agree with me. It's like, I don't know if it's because we're at our own homes or in our offices, and we've been assigned to basically discuss and take a deep dive into certain topics. I think it's kind of different, and I like it. So that's that. All right. Nothing else come before us. I want to thank the interns. I'm sure I'll be working with them here in the next couple weeks. I want to thank Lieutenant for all your hard work in regards to your presentations and what you do for the Akron Police Department. Captain, obviously, I always thank you a lot because you're my guy in my district that I go to for all my problems, and I appreciate that. And obviously, let's thank Sarah, obviously here every evening to record the minutes and host the meeting and share our screens and everything like that. So Sarah, I want to thank you for all your hard work. You are an awesome deputy clerk of council. If anyone says different, you let me know. I don't think they will.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So with that, I'll ask Russ if he wants to make the motion to adjourn.
So move.
All right, second. All in favor? Aye. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening and a happy